and welcome to week 2. Now we finally get to dive into Maya and see what we can do. So this week, I'll look at your canvas real quick. I'm doing a thing now where you may see that this is all published on your end, but it's locked until Mondays at 6 a.m. So you won't be able to really look into it. You'll be able to see all that's there, but you can't click into it. So don't think anything's broken. It will open on Monday. That way you have a week to go through everything. This week, and what will become kind of common, you will have this week 2 video to watch, a discussion board, and then your assignment. So the discussion this week is, what is 3D? How is it used? So now that you've been exposed to Maya and what you can do in the software, think about how you would define 3D. Where and how is it used? What do you think you personally would want to do in a 3D world? And think about beyond, but including modeling. So there's rigging, there's animation, there's texturing, there's lighting. Think about, VR, beyond. Think about future things that don't even exist yet. Also, you can think about modeling. Your initial posts are due by Wednesday, and your response posts, like for you to respond to 2 of your classmates, by Sunday. I can only put one due date in discussion boards, so you'll see it's the Sunday date, but make sure you're getting those initial posts in by Wednesday so that we really have time to talk about it. And then your assignment. Create a scene using standard or basic primitives, which we will go over what that means. Make sure to move, rotate, and scale the shapes to create as realistic of a scene as you can. Make sure you're checking all viewports to make sure that you're lining up your shapes. Create a ground plane on the grid for your projects or objects to sit on. Due Sunday, just submit your Maya file. We'll go over how to do that as well. Okay, so back to Maya. We talked briefly last class about your viewports here. And we can hit spacebar to toggle 4 views, put your mouse over one of them, and you can go into that viewport. This is also very editable. See these kind of dotted lines in here? Your mouse will become a double arrow. You can click and drag. So if you wanted to see 2 viewports or 4, I have a tendency to do 1, 2, or 4. It's going to be up to the project. You'll notice there are buttons over here. They do the same thing, but I really want you to get used to using hotkeys. Hotkeys are going to make everything faster and easier, okay? So I'm going to start by just talking about hotkeys. Know that there are buttons for these things, but you're going to want to use hotkeys. So I like to rest my left hand, whether or not you're right or left-handed, I'm sorry, but this is how it's kind of has to be. But my left hand is on my keyboard, just like it would be for typing, so I have them on the FDSA. Rest your thumb on the space bar. So then your thumb can toggle while you're using the mouse. We'll get into the other hotkeys in a second. All right. So then Command on a Mac and Alt on a PC and your left mouse button are going to rotate around your viewport. Command or Alt and your middle mouse are going to pan, and rolling your middle mouse is going to zoom. You want to make sure you're comfortable with viewport navigation. Easier said than done, and it will take some getting used to. Sometimes, when I was first starting, I would just write out some of these hotkeys so that I could be like, oh, I want to pan, how do I do that? Oh, well, it's Control and middle mouse. I'm sure there are also websites out there that do that. All right, so now we can go to Create Polygon Primitives. For this course, we are only going to be using polygons. Polygons are made up of faces. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I go and create, let's just do a cube, for instance. This cube is made up of 6 faces. We're going to get into how you select those faces and all of that next week. But for right now, polygon primitives are made up of faces. NURBs, which we're not going to do. NURB stands for non-uniform rational B-splines. These shapes look the same, right? It looks the same, but these are actually more formed by the edges. So if you're used to Photoshop and Illustrator, NURBS are kind of your illustrator, your curves that make up shapes, whereas primitives are four-sided pixels that make up shapes. If you ever want to delete anything, you can just click on it, hit delete on your keyboard. So create polygon primitives. These are your base primitives that we're going to be working with this week. You can also go to Poly Modeling here, this tab, and they're nicely laid out for you here. If you want kind of the more complex ones, they're in this option as well. Let me stop making so many. Command Z is going to undo. And I appear to be having a slight glitch, but all right, so let's make any shape. Whenever you create anything in Maya, you're going to see that it pops up on our outliner. Now the outliner, it's kind of like layers, but not really. Order does not matter over here. This is just showing you everything that's in your scene. So I'm just going to create a bunch of polygons real quick. You can see all that's in my scene listed here. If I wanted to reach, let's say, the cone, but I can't see it and I don't know how to click it, you can always click on it in your outliner. If your outliner isn't up, maybe you don't see it, you can always go to Window, Outliner, and that'll pop that up. This shows lights, cameras, shapes. Doesn't show texture, but it's all objects that are in your scene. And again, I'm just hitting Z to undo. You don't need Control. Sorry if I mentioned that earlier. So Z undoes. Then I'm just going to go and create a cube here. So our outliner, I like to always leave this up. This allows me to see everything that's going on in my scene. When I also create a shape, you'll notice over here. Now over here we have your channel box and your attribute editor. These you can hit Control A to toggle between them, or you can just hit the tabs. Your channel box and your attribute editor are basically informative pieces. So channel box makes it a little easier to see. There are a little less options here. But I have my cube. You can see it says P cube 1. And then I have translate, rotate, and scale. So if I knew I wanted this to be 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, I could always just go 3, 3, 3. I'm just clicking, typing in 3, and clicking on the next one, or clicking in the viewport, or you can hit enter. So you can always scale, rotate, and translate means to move. Sometimes you might not know, like maybe I want this cube to be right here, but I don't know how far away that is from the center. You can click on any of these words. So I'll click on translate Y. It'll go up in the sky. If you click on the word, middle mouse, click and drag, you can kind of toggle that information. Okay, so I'm clicking on the word, middle mouse, click and dragging in the viewport. So for instance, that's 5.55 units. I want that back at 0. I can put it at 0. Now you may notice 0 does not mean flat on the ground plane. Each object has a center point or a pivot point. That is going to be at the center of each shape. And so Maya takes that and matches the center of the shape up with the center of the grid. Now that seems all kind of complicated when I should be able to just free move, rotate, and scale, which is the truth. So if you hit W on your keyboard, W is move. This is the move button, but I want you to focus on hotkeys. So remember, my left hand is here. I'll just use my ring finger, W. Now I can move. This arrow thing here is called a gizmo. And you can move your mouse over and click and drag on any of the arrows to move in that direction. You'll notice that the number changes in my channel box. We're doing the same thing but different ways. So there's move. E is rotate. And R is scale. If you want to scale proportionally, not moving, maybe one side at a time, same thing for move and rotate, you'll grab this middle one. So if I hit W for move, if I click this arrow, it doesn't matter where I move my mouse, I'm only moving across that axis. But if I grab this middle point, I can free move my shape wherever I want. Okay, so W, E, R, move, rotate, scale. It's also move, rotate, and scale, but get used to using hotkeys. I'm telling you, it's going to be the best. Move, rotate, scale, translate, rotate, scale, all doing the same thing. If I look into my attribute editor, there's going to be a lot of information here. It gets a little complicated, but all I need you to kind of look at right now is polycube 1. What this allows you to do is change the proportions of your shape a different way. You could do it with scale instead. As we move on, maybe next week we'll kind of look at subdivisions, but you can add edges in your shape. Don't worry about that for right now. We'll get to that later, just know that it's here. Each of these tabs is a node of information. So every time we do something to this shape, if we transform it, if we add edges to it, there's gonna be a new tab here, and it's Maya's way of keeping information and keeping it organized. So for instance, and you don't need to remember this for right now, but Lambert is this gray texture that's on it. So it's just a tab in my attribute editor for this cube. Okay? So I know that was a lot of information to be thrown at you, so you can watch this again or practice on your own. But again, I'm just going to delete this for right now, create a shape. I know move, rotate, and scale are W, E, and R. And then I'm going to have to navigate around my perspective view to try to get, this realistic scene. So maybe I make a shape, and I'll make another one. I might want to have them overlap. And I can make another one, use W for my move, and I'm starting to make a snowman. And if I navigate around, we can see they're all lined up. Okay? So what I'd want you to do for your assignment is kind of get an idea of what you'd want to make, and then using these base shapes, excuse me, and moving them around, we can then start to create a scene. So let's say I've made this, and I want to move my snowman over here because I'm going to build a house here, whatever it is. I can always click and drag in my viewport, and I've selected all three things. I can also hold Shift to select multiple in my outliner, or I can do Command to select multiple ones that way. If you hold Shift, it's going to click whatever is between the two that you click on. If you hold Control, I can click random ones without getting in between. Or again, click and drag, or you can click on the viewport, hold Shift, and grab your shapes. And then I'm going to hit W, and I can just move this over wherever I want it. And then I'll just check, like, oops, I accidentally moved it down a little bit, so I can move it up in space so it's sitting on the grid. Maybe I hit spacebar. Since I know I want it to sit on the grid, I can look at one of these side views and raise it up a little bit. Now I know for a fact, because I'm looking at a direct side view, that that is sitting perfectly on the grid. All right, so creating base shapes, getting used to navigating around your viewport, Command or Alt left mouse, middle mouse, and roll your middle mouse. W, E, and R. Move, rotate, scale. Take a look at your outliner, your channel box, and your attribute editor. Okay, so now once you have your scene set up, not sure what's going on over here. I think it has to do with me recording and opening Maya, but you'll want to go to File, Save Scene. Now you'll notice we have Save Scene As and Increment and Save. This is vital information, and I promise you at some point this will happen to you and you'll be very grateful if you increment your saves. What incrementing does is, let's say I save this file as Snowman. If I click on Increment and Save, it'll save it as Snowman 001, Snowman 002, Snowman 003, etc., etc., etc. A lot of times, I mean not every time, but more than we would like, our files will get a glitch in them. And if you haven't incremented your saves, if you only have one save file that you've been working on for 2 weeks or whatever it is, if it gets a glitch, you've lost your entire scene. You've lost your entire file. But if you increment your saves and save, 15 has a glitch, you can go back to scene 14 and it's a completely different file. Yes, you may have lost some work, but it is much better than losing your entire scene. So whether you choose to increment and save or just do a save scene and change, or save scene as and change the name, that's completely up to you. But we can hit this little box. Anytime you see a box in your menu, that means there's options to it. So save scene as. We have Maya ASCII and Maya binary. I'm going to say for this course, use Maya binary. Binary and ASCII, for those of you that are into computer science and all that stuff, it has to do with the code that is saving your file and what type of code you're using. Maya binary is a little bit more simplified. Maya ASCII can kind of be opened in different versions of Maya. But again, for this course, for turning into Canvas, for all of that, we're just going to use Maya binary, which is MB. So whatever you save it as, it'll save it, fuller.mb. You can leave everything as is, and then go to Save Scene As. You can select over here where you want to save it. I'm just going to put it on my desktop. I'll call it Fuller Assignment 1 or Fuller Base Primitives, whatever you want. Last name, something included, just so I know. And then we'll see here, Maya binary. If you wanted to change it, you can here, but we'll just leave it to binary, save as. Student version file, this is telling you, you can't use this for a job. That's fine. Continue. And then down at the bottom, you'll see result, desktop, Fuller Assignment 1. And then if I go to my desktop, you'll see right here, it's an MB file. It can only be opened in Maya. We'll get to a point eventually where we're rendering images so that you can open it in anything, but you'll take that MB file and then you'll submit it into Canvas for the homework assignment. Okay? So don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Again, we're going to take this a little bit slower and simplified, and I say slower and simplified as I know I've just shouted off a bunch of different hotkeys and terms and all of that. So really kind of explore. Try to fill the grid with a scene. Think about different objects. Think about what you can make with base shapes. Okay, I know we can't really mold these shapes yet, but move, rotate, scale, get used to navigating around the viewport, and reach out with anything. All right, hope you have a great second week.